All right, we will go ahead and get started. Good morning. I am Kristen Peck. I'm the current chair of the State Chamber and also Vice President of Public Affairs for Cox Communications. And we are very grateful that you're here with us today. Infrastructure is a key component of Oklahoma's ability to compete for new and future economic development projects, while also being a critical need for existing business growth in Oklahoma. Access Oklahoma stands for Advancing and Connecting Communities and Economies Safely Statewide. This is a $5 billion, 15-year long-range plan that identifies and addresses ongoing highway infrastructure needs to improve access to communities across the Oklahoma Turnpike network. We are pleased to have two of the foremost experts of this new program with us today, including Oklahoma Secretary of Transportation, Tim Gatz. He was named the executive director of the Oklahoma Department of Transportation in 2019 and previously served more than 2 decades at ODOT. He's an OSU grad and is also a registered professional landscape architect. We're also pleased to have the deputy director of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority with us today, Joe Echelle. Joe began his career with ODOT more than 2 decades ago and led various high-profile projects, including the I-40 Crosstown project in Oklahoma City. He has served at OTA since 2016, leading projects such as the $1.2 billion Driving Forward Turnpike Improvement Program. Thank you both for joining us today, and I will first turn it over to Secretary Gatz, and then we'll ask Joe to dive into the specifics of the Access program. And finally, State Chamber President and CEO Chad Warmington will close out the webinar with a few questions pertinent to the business community. Secretary Gatz, take it away.
Thank you, Kristen, and Chad and the State Chamber. Really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you this morning, talk a little bit about Access Oklahoma. I think when you look at transportation in Oklahoma, we are really a hub in the United States. We're served by multiple interstates and truly are the crossroads of America. And if you look at the transportation infrastructure tools that we have in our toolbox, we have the tax-supported highway system that really is representative of all the things that the Department of Transportation does with the 8-year construction work plan, as an example. Their resources are entirely committed to maintaining the tax-supported transportation system that we have. The Turnpike Authority, by contrast, has always been that entity since they were created in statute in 1947 that has the ability to come in where tax-supported resources just can't quite make the improvements that are necessary and help fill those gaps. And that really dates all the way back to the Turner Turnpike at the very beginning. Access Oklahoma is really the next phase of the Turnpike Authority trying to assist with how Oklahoma's transportation system is going to grow and look in the future. The access could not be a more appropriate name. When you look at the Turnpike network and you look at the needs, and as transportation professionals, we can't sit with the infrastructure that we have today. We have to try to project 30 years into the future and make improvements that really are representative of the infrastructure that's going to be needed to fulfill and meet those needs. So access is all about that. Whether you're talking about widening the Turner Turnpike, the primary connection between our 2 major metropolitan areas, whether you're talking about adding new access points across the network and enhancing access for communities and economies, whether you're talking about looking at some of the new opportunities that are encompassed within the reliever and expansion routes that we've got planned both in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, expanding the Will Rogers Turnpike, widening the Kilpatrick Turnpike because of the growth that we're seeing in traffic volumes. All of those things factor in to keeping Oklahoma's ability to move our people, maintain a high quality of life, and provide those growth opportunities for the future. And I know everybody really has talked a lot about generational improvements, but I want to tell you the Access Oklahoma program and the Turnpike Authority initiative, coupled with the work that the Department of Transportation is going to accomplish in the 8-year construction work plan, truly is representative of generational investment that's going to be needed for the next 30 years in Oklahoma. So again, we're very excited about the prospect of ODOT and OTA working together, and the prospect of what Access Oklahoma is going to mean across the next 15-year window. That's something I'll call attention to that's a little bit unique. Turnpike Authority historically looks at these programs every 5 to 8 years. We owe it to the traveling public, and we owe it to the citizens of Oklahoma to really look longer range this time and be more deliberate in our planning process. And that's what we're trying to do. And certainly look forward to the conversation today and the opportunity to visit in more detail. Kristen, back to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Secretary. So now, Joe, how about we'll pitch it to you. If you could just dive into some details around the Access program and talk to just about how this will affect business across Oklahoma.
Sure, thank you, Kristen. So just making sure you can see the screen that I've got shared here. I'm going to kind of walk us through a little bit on our new website. So we stood up accessoklahoma.com. You have to type it actually in the web bar, so it's accessoklahoma.com. And that's in order to be able to show a plan that's this big, this long range, and be able to provide frequent updates as needed. We launched a website where we could do just that. Now, a lot of our focus most recently has been on one particular project, and I'm sure everybody's aware of that location, so I'll get to that in a minute. But a lot of stuff is available on this website, including some of the individual projects that we're looking at completing. There's an updates page where we're showing where our upcoming public meetings are being conducted and the time and place. We've got frequently asked questions, which involve everything from frequently asked questions about this program, and even some more general things just about the Turnpike that we've published just in the last recent couple weeks. We've got, I know one of the big concerns in order to build a large program, a lot of miles of road, and even some of the widenings require property acquisition. So we outline our property acquisition process here on this tab. And then there's a place on here to connect where if somebody has concerns or they want mailed or emailed or phone called updates as the projects progress, there's a place on there where they can either give us their email or phone in there. On back to the homepage, we've listed a podcast that goes into a lot greater detail than I'm going to have time to do today. $5 billion program. I could talk about this for several hours, and that would probably just hit the highlights really. But down here on the homepage, there's a project map, and I want to get to that because that really shows how wide and expansive this program is. When the Turnpike Authority was first created to build the Turner Turnpike, there were only 3 places you could get on or off between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and those were at Chandler, Stroud, and Bristow. And through the years, and then you could get off at Sepulpa, but through the years, we've added only an interchange at Wellston and one near Luther at Hogback Road. That really causes us some issues with the truck traffic and the traffic makeup that exists on the existing 4-lane divided. So I want to spend just a second looking at just the Turner Turnpike here and the section that has not been widened, basically from just west of Kellyville all the way down to I-35 in the Edmond, Oklahoma City corridor. What ends up happening when we have a major accident or a traffic issue on the Turner Turnpike, there's not a frequent exit to take traffic on or off to manage an accident. Route 66 exists. It's not the best, but it is a place that we can put traffic when we have a major accident. Just this last week, the Turner Turnpike closed near the Kickapoo connection due to an issue that we had, and so we routed the traffic going eastbound up to 66. and the traffic going westbound was actually taken off at the Kickapoo Turnpike and taken south. And without that reliever route, we'd have been putting all of that traffic at 40,000 vehicles a day onto Route 66. So major issue with the frequency of interchanges. So what we're showing here is a new interchange that's just east of Lake Arcadia. This is actually at Post Road. This is a new interchange at State Highway 102. The interchange isn't shown because it's part of the capital plan, but we've got an ongoing project that's coming up at Wellston. A redo of the interchange at Chandler, new interchange at Davenport. This shows a pretty significant connection back to Route 66. All of these added new interchanges have to have a strong, what we're calling a strong connection back to the state highway system, so that they provide some form of independent utility. Redo of the interchange at Stroud, a new interchange at Depew. Big deal between Stroud and Bristow is almost 17 miles, I think. And so having an interchange in here at Depew will allow us to manage traffic a little bit better in that location. Pretty intense interchange modification at Bristow. So this is where we have one of the old trumpets with the clover leaf. And so this includes a split diamond with one-way frontage roads on each side. That's at least what we're conceptualizing right now. And an added interchange just right here where the 6-lane began, here at Lake, here near Lake Haven, which is between Kellyville and Bristow. This new interchange will allow us to manage traffic really while we're rebuilding that Bristow interchange. Staying up in the Tulsa area, we've got a widening project to do a full widening of the on the Will Rogers Turnpike between Claremore back to US 412. This section is beginning to become congested. We've also got a project coming that's going to add an interchange here at Flint Road, where State Highway 20 is going to have an alternate route that comes around here to the south side of Claremore. We know we're going to pick up, because of the odd location of this interchange that currently serves Claremore. We know if we put one on the south side, that's going to be a more direct route for the residents in Claremore that are trying to get to and from Tulsa. So pretty significant project there. It involves two very big bridges over the Verdigris navigation channel that will have to either replace the bridges or widen the ones that are there.
And Joe, I'll make one more point real quick there. Highway 412 across for east-west across Oklahoma has recently been the recipient of a potential interstate designation between I-35 and I-49 in Arkansas. The Department of Transportation and Turnpike are working diligently on 412 now to prepare for that interstate designation to be placed on that route. That's significant, again, for Oklahoma's future and certainly for future growth opportunities. So that's an important aspect, and another reason why we're looking hard at both the Turner and the Will Rogers and the growth of traffic that we're going to continue to see in those corridors. Sorry, Joe.
That's all right. I'm glad you pointed that out. Another thing that we're going to capture on the Will Rogers Turnpike is the interchange and exit that's up here at Adair. The interchange is one directional, so if you get off, you can only get back on going back toward Claremore and back toward Tulsa. And so driver expectancy, especially for out-of-state, out-of-town drivers, get off there. And then we've had incidents, and this is not the only location like this, where people have actually backed up on an on-ramp, backed the wrong way down it to get back on going the direction they want, so they intended to go. So we've got to correct a few of those. This is one of those locations. A similar situation here at Broken Arrow. There are other alternatives here, but an on and off ramp that fixes the connection with Creek Turnpike and Highway 51. This is a bridge rehab project, the Hakey Creek bridges. The folks that live and that travel in Tulsa, Broken Arrow, and that section of the Creek Turnpike will know those for the bumpy roller coaster bridges that they are. We're going to do a rehabilitation on those. On the northwest side of Tulsa, we're proposing to complete the loop around Tulsa, which is the northwest, what we call the northwest segment of the Gilcrease Expressway. This portion right here between 51st Street and Edison connecting I-244 and I-44 on the south to US 412, future interstate, and Edison Street on the north across the Arkansas River is currently under construction and anticipated to open later this summer. This section has been under construction for about 2.5, going on 2.5 years now, and provides a really great connection across the river and a beautiful scene from the river. You can see the skyline downtown Tulsa. Pretty neat whenever it gets opened up. Drivers will get to see that. This portion of the Gilcrease, the right of way has already been acquired by the city of Tulsa. And so we're in the works on figuring out where those plans are and developing the cost of that. That project's going to be a little bit unique because it is federalized, unlike the rest of our network, which is not federalized. So that will cause us to look at funding that project maybe in a way a little different than the way we funded the rest of our network. Down on the Indian Nation Turnpike, shifting to southeast Oklahoma, there is a few added interchanges. One that's an existing interchange here at Indianola, off of the Indian Nation Turnpike. The interchange is only directional to the north. You can get off going southbound, you can get on going north. So this completes it. This is Tannehill Road, a new interchange, again, breaking up those long distances on the turnpike with added access points. And since the turnpike opened in the 60s, there is development on the northwest side of Tulsa, McAllister, around the Scipio and Tannehill area. This is an interchange modification with US 69. A lot of accidents happen here where you have to turn actually across interstate type traffic on US 69 to get on and off. So we're proposing to complete the loop ramps. That'll be in a partnership project with ODOT. And another interchange add down at Blanco with State Highway 63, another partnership project with ODOT to provide better connectivity to that area. Jumping over to the west side on the H.E. Bailey Turnpike, that portion of I-44, we've got several locations that we're proposing to fix interchanges or add interchanges. This one's here at Cyril. It's only one directional again, so we'll complete that interchange. One here east of Cement, which is an interchange, an added interchange to US 277. Another interchange on the north side of Chickasha at Highway 92. One east of Amber that will need a connection back to Amber, a strong connection along the county road that we've been actually in discussions with the town of Amber recently. And then before I get to the new alignment stuff, the last piece that I want to touch on, or second to last piece, is the John Kilpatrick Turnpike. We're going to finish widening from I-40 all the way around I-35. There's a 10-mile segment that's already been completed. In addition to that, full directional ramps to and from the south on Hefner Parkway. So these are added flyovers. This will be Oklahoma's first high five interchange, with the northbound to westbound leg being the fifth level of the bridge. And then completing the one-way frontage roads out to county line. When this was originally constructed, again, out in the country, there was not a lot to serve. And we see the need now to continue those service roads down to county line and finish the Diamond interchange, which will better serve the people that live between Piedmont and Edmond there on the north side of Oklahoma City. One last interchange that I want to talk about is up here north of Glencoe on State Highway 108 on the Cimarron Turnpike. That's an added interchange. The city of Glencoe, town of Glencoe has asked for that multiple times throughout the years. So I want to jump really quickly to this south extension and the outer loop portion of this program. This is about 50 miles of new alignment, and the big deal here being that it connects from the south end of the John Kilpatrick south and east around the Will Rogers Airport to a connection here on I-44. We jump down to the Tri-City area and are going to connect Tri-City and all of this development that's currently going on between this housing development really here between Tuttle and Newcastle better connect this 55,000 vehicles a day that are on I-44 to the 100,000 vehicles a day that occur over here on I-35 and more. So this is a new South Canadian river crossing. We anticipated one-way frontage road, so this looks a lot like the John Kilpatrick Turnpike there around Quail Springs Mall. So one-way frontage roads on each side, interchanges every couple of miles, a full directional interchange here at I-35. And those one-way frontage roads continue out here east of I-35, about 7 miles, and then goes to an interchange which connects us back to the south end of the Kickapoo Turnpike. Just in the last couple of weeks has started going certain days carrying more than 13,000 vehicles a day. Those are trips, so not any given segments carrying 13,000, but about 13,000 trips in a day. Added, we've got an interchange shown here at Peebly, an interchange shown at Choctaw, and then what we call the South Extension is really a straight line shot off of the outer loop on the east side of Norman, west of Lake Thunderbird, with an interchange at Alameda, one at State Highway 9, one at Etowah Road, one at US 77, and then a full directional interchange back at I-35. And when you zoom out and you can kind of see what we're trying to take care of, the traffic growth that is occurring, that's been projected for the last 30 years on I-35, all the projections have been exceeded in every year except for 2008 when the economy went down, and in 2020 due to COVID that the traffic went down, but it's back and it's growing again somewhere between 2% and 4% a year. And so at those growth rates in about 30 years, this traffic volume will double. And so we have to provide some type of reliever route for I-35 so that when traffic backs up, or for the people that are just trying to go north and east that aren't destined for Oklahoma City, that are either trying to get to Tulsa or Shawnee or someplace north and east of Tulsa, they have a route that can take them around the congestion that continues to grow on that portion of I-35, which will buy ODOT some time to manage and do some operational improvements that they are currently intending to do on that portion of I-35. So in 15 minutes, about as fast as I could go, that's the OTA Access Oklahoma program. Be happy, I think, to answer some questions.
Covered a lot of ground there.
As fast as I could talk. And
Yeah.
I'm not a fast talker.
Well, it's pretty good, and I'm glad you did. I'm sure there's a bunch of people that have questions as well, but give us an idea, and feel free to text in the tab, or type in the chat box if you have a question. But give us an idea on some of the economic development or some of the growth, the decisions you make for these where these routes go, and for even these projects. There's some huge economic development growth opportunity that occurs with that. How do you all factor that into the decision making on that? Do you use kind of economic models for that, or what goes into that decision as well? Because we know that's going to happen, and we know that you can trigger that. I'm just kind of curious that process of how that economic development gets factored into that.
Chad, it's certainly something we pay attention to. Our primary focus and our primary concern is trying to manage the traffic growth that we know we're going to experience. That's what we're truly focused on. And I'll use the I-35 corridor as an example. Right out here, just a little bit south of where I'm sitting, where I-35 crosses the Oklahoma River, there's 150,000 cars a day that cross the Oklahoma River in the I-35 corridor. During peak periods, it's far above capacity, and we will eventually see Interstate 35 turn to gridlock conditions if we don't invest in moving that traffic. In the 35 corridor, there are huge truck turning movements that come into the Oklahoma City proper because they want to go east or west on 40, or they want to hit the Turner Turnpike and go northeast. and vice versa. So we've got to begin to think about, and we have been. These outer loops are not new ideas. They've been in existence for more than 30 years, but we've got to get about the business now. And you hear me talk about Interstate 40 as a dividing line in Oklahoma City. When you go north, you have Interstate 44 that moves traffic east and west, and you have the Kilpatrick Turnpike that moves traffic east and west. When you go south, we've got Interstate 240 and really nothing that moves that traffic east and west between I-44 and I-35. We have to overcome that. And the only way to do that is to invest in these big, modern interstate quality facilities. When you look at economy, the Kilpatrick Turnpike is a great example. When we finished construction on the Kilpatrick, a lot of it was out in the middle of a pasture, and I heard said that you could roller skate down the middle of it and not get worried about getting run over. Today, if you look at the growth that's happened, and these improvements are being made in some of the fastest growing counties in the state of Oklahoma. And we have to put these types of plans in place and get about the business of implementing them to support that opportunity, that growth, and maintain the quality. We're not going to take congestion out of the I-35 corridor. This is about what could happen in the future if we don't make investments in moving traffic. So,
yeah, to that end, I was just kind of curious if do you all do any kind of coordinated studies in terms of adding other forms of transportation, light rail or other alternatives to roads? Do you kind of coordinate that or factor that into some of your decision making as well?
Absolutely. And when you look at modal transportation, whether that's bus transit, rubber tire transit, whether you're talking about potential commuter rail or Amtrak, those are things that we're always paying attention to because, again, in a growing state like Oklahoma, where we have a very bright future ahead of us, all modes are going to be important to sustain, especially in the major metropolitan areas. So, in Oklahoma City, we're looking right now, working with the state of Kansas at a service development plan to explore the opportunity to extend the Heartland Flyer Service up to Newton, Kansas, and make that connection to the Southwest Chief. That's important to Oklahoma's future, having that alternative available. So we've started some discussions and study around that aspect. That would increase train frequency in the Heartland Flyer corridor, which could provide another opportunity. Also, there is the RTA here in the Oklahoma City metropolitan area is working on some very significant discussion around commuter rail opportunities. All of that is going to be important. The thing that those modal opportunities do is provide alternatives for our citizenry. But when you're dealing with the traffic volumes in the 35 corridor, that 150,000 cars a day that we've got out there, a commuter train just can't take enough traffic off of those facilities to stop or alleviate congestion. That does not discount the importance of those modes and the work that's being done and the studies that are being done around those opportunities, because they are really important for Oklahoma to be considering for our future. Also, here's some discussion about a rail connection between Oklahoma City and Tulsa. The challenge that we have with it is, especially when you get into the realm of high-speed rail, rail lines and those types of facilities want to be both straight and flat. And there's not a lot of terrain between Oklahoma City and Tulsa that's either straight or flat. So you've got to deal with terrain challenges, which means that translates to probably in excess of $100 million a mile to be able to build a high-speed type facility. And when you look at that, it's cost prohibitive right now. That doesn't mean that at some point in the future that might not be a serious consideration. But our best opportunity to connect our two major metropolitan areas in a creative way is, let's go ahead and add some capacity to the Turnpike. It's an innovation corridor already. It's got more bandwidth in that highway right away than about any highway in the state of Oklahoma. If we add capacity and make all 90 miles of it look like that east end, it gives us opportunities for everything from autonomous vehicles to dedicated transit type operations. So that gives us our best chance to be able to be creative and innovative in that corridor. So yeah, we look at a lot of different aspects, Chad.
Great answer. That makes a ton of sense. Kind of a general question, and got a couple that were specific, but our good friend, Mr. Farzana at Home Creations was asking a question that we'll pass along. But generally, when you're doing development in an area like this, how do you work with either developers or economic developers, and in this case, private developers, on the impact to the area they're going to be and whether they should move forward with projects or not? So, for instance, in this case, Mr. Farzana is talking about a development out near where the Turnpike would be. How do you help, facilitate kind of go, no-go discussions with developers on things like that, just in terms of impact and construction or whatever all the impacts might be? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you, or for you to have that discussion maybe with your team about thinking through major projects that are going to be aligned with or associated with a Turnpike development?
So anything that's going on, whether that's, whether it's along one of the new routes or something that's projected along one of our existing routes where we're looking at adding an interchange, we want to know what those needs of the community are, and see if there's a possibility. Maybe there's a location where we don't currently show an interchange and we need to add one, or maybe there's a location where we're showing an interchange that there's no reason to put one there. And those are the kind of conversations we're on day 60 or so of a 15-year long range plan. These projects are big. They take a long time to put together, talking about how much traffic and all the development that will eventually come or could come along these corridors. We want to know what the thoughts of the community and the thoughts of the area are, because that affects some of the decisions that we're making in the design process, which is what we're currently in. We just started doing some of the survey work a couple of weeks ago. We've assigned designers. We're still working through everybody's just trying to find their seat to get to start work on it. So the best way to get in touch with us is through that accessoklahoma.com website. Utilize the connect feature that goes to Poe and Associates. We've got a few folks there that are managing the inbox. If there's a pertinent question like that, they'll pass that up, and we'll get to work on setting up a meeting to look at whatever development somebody is proposing. One thing that we're really early in talking about, but is the construction phasing. And if you go on that, in particular, the piece, in particular, all of it, but the section on the Turner, we can't put 70 miles under construction all at one time, or we wouldn't. So we're going to have to break that up into a few 5 to 8 mile long projects. That's going to take a lot of time. We're in the process of developing what that schedule would look like, so that anybody who's a development person or a city person in any of those communities that are affected will know about when we're going to be coming there with construction. The added interchanges, some of those need work to the local network. So we're not going to go build a county road 3 or 4 miles and beef it up with a bunch of pavement. We're going to ask the local communities to put a little skin in the game. So if they'll help us with that, that'll help us move those particular projects along. When you talk about the new alignments and the new extension on the south side of Oklahoma City, we've set a priority list, which is Tri-City over to I-35. That very first segment gets across the river, then I-35 around to the Kickapoo, and then the section up there around the Will Rogers Airport, and then that south extension down to Highway 9, and then from Highway 9 back to I-35. If every one of those takes 3 years and you got 5 phases, it's 15-year program. So that kind of tells you where the 15 years comes from. It also, the elastic band in this is our ability to go to the bond market. If gas prices are high, if there's all kinds of factors that can affect how fast we're going to end up being able to go to the bond market to move this project forward. If there's some effect on that, it could take longer. I know there's gonna be a lot of people that once we get started, once we establish an alignment, they're just gonna want us to go probably faster. And so there's a lot of factors in how fast some of that can go. But one of them is us being able to communicate that schedule and the timeline to those community developers.
And Chad, just a kind of quick summary, I think hearing from the developers right now is the time. So, again, we'd encourage them to certainly get in contact with us. We're happy to sit down individually and talk. We're happy to make sure that we understand what the needs are out there. And again, the timing of this is such that right now is a good place to start because again, as Joe points out, we're very early in the process.
Man, it's exciting and really we got tons of questions, but we're running out of time. But boy, I tell you, really excited and glad to have you guys there doing this work. I think the bright future for Oklahoma and infrastructure is the key behind any successful economy. And we know that you all are going to be hard at work and making sure we've got that in place. Kristen, I'm going to toss it back to you to wrap us up.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you, gentlemen. I do have one final question, Joe. Did I completely butcher the pronunciation of your name at the beginning of this program?
No, I think you got it right.
Okay, good. Where there's a couple of texts that I got saying, I don't think that's right. So you have such an important role in Oklahoma. We want to make sure that everybody knows who you are, and I got that right. So thank you both for joining us. I've been in Oklahoma now since 2009, and one of the things that I brag about to my friends and to my coworkers are the commute times here. And I know that the traffic has picked up significantly even since I've moved here. And I know you all are working very hard, not just on making sure the state is safe, but also keeping that quality of life that we all know and love here in Oklahoma. So we really appreciate getting to know the programs around the state and appreciate the work that you are doing on this. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity, Kristen. We really appreciate the chance to visit this morning.
Very good. Well, we'll have to have you back, but there are many, as Chad said, there's still a lot of questions in the chat. If you have questions, please send them to info@accessoklahoma.com and you can get your questions answered there. So thank you all for joining us today. Before I sign off, though, I do want to also say we are over halfway through the legislative session this year. And we want to make sure that you have every opportunity to champion business issues at the Capitol. There's still time to register for the Employees in Action Day at the Capitol. The registration should be coming up on the screen. This is it's an exclusive event taking place on April 18th, and it's for HR professionals in your company to learn more about the legislation being considered this year that would impact HR and labor law policies within your organization. So we really hope that you can join us there. Again, thank you all for joining us today. And with that, we are adjourned. Have a great week.